Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon. This is John Suntress. It's December and it's holiday season. Consider a lot of the guests on Word Balloon as gift ideas because I really think a lot of the creators have new product, no matter what it is, whether it's a film or a TV show or obviously comic book, a graphic novel, whatever. And, of course, our regular sponsor, Aftershock, should be considered that way as well. If you have questions or comments about the show, reach me via email. Best way to contact me, john@wordballoon.com. Also, follow me on Twitter under John Wordballoon and on Facebook on my name, John Suntress, and the Word Balloon Network. Thank you for listening to the show. Thank you for listening through the commercials. Yes, sometimes they repeat, but it is the holiday season, and I have no control over the repeaters. But that's how I get paid from them, is by you listening all the way through those commercials and into the show. We're coming back after one more commercial, and then we'll start things off. But as always, thanks very much for listening. Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. Really happy to finally welcome Matthew Rosenberg to Word Balloon. I've been wanting Matt ever since Four Kids Walked Into a Bank, his wonderful Black Mask series. We talk about his work at Black Mask, but of course we talk about his Marvel work as well. Man, that guy's made such an impact with great runs on Punisher and a great Kingpin series and a great Jamie Madrox Multiple Man series that I really enjoyed. And he's got a great new book with Otto Schmidt coming out in January, right on New Year's Day. It's Hawkeye FreeFall. And he was kind enough to let me look at the book, and it's a great start. I can't wait. I think it's a very intriguing story. And as I say, it complements the previous Hawkeye runs, but it's very uniquely Matt in its own right, and Otto, of course. And I like it. I like this direction for Hawkeye. We talk about the costume. Is he going to be in the old-fashioned costume or not? And I enjoy Hawkeye's old costume, but it almost doesn't make sense. He really doesn't need it. And the Avengers movie costume is fine, too. I like plainclothes Hawkeye. I kind of like Clint Barton sliding around, and the way we know it's him is he's got purple shades as opposed to Matt Murdock's red shades. But, and of course, the hair color is different. But no, I'm smiling. You can hear it in my voice. I like Clint Barton getting into the Marvel Universe and doing it, isn't it interesting, covertly in plain clothes rather than overtly with a costume. I think it's very interesting, and that's the direction that Matt and Otto are going into in this Hawkeye series. We talk a lot about Matthew's past. I had no idea he worked with the Wu-Tang Clan. I really didn't know that, and we talk about his collaborations with RZA and the others, and Ghosts and everything. It's amazing, and I feel so old and just blah when I talk about the Wu-Tang Clan, but they have fascinated me since the 90s, and I think they are great storytellers, and it's pretty cool that Matthew got hooked up with them and did a few projects with them. And also the history of Black Mask. Honestly, I think Black Mask is one of the great publishers out there. I am happy to provide a spotlight to them. Matthew also mentioned some other great creators, including the publisher as well, who also writes for Black Mask. And I had totally forgotten that their origins started with Occupy Comics. Pretty cool. So we go back and look at all of that. And also Matt's time in the music business. It cannot help but notice the parallels between the music business and the comic book business as far as the changes and where it's gone and how digital is so important these days. Fascinating stuff with Matthew Rosenberg on today's Word Balloon. I hope you'll enjoy it. It's all brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners. Thank you greatly, League, for your support via Patreon. Truly means a lot. I am building out Word Balloon. I'm trying to make it bigger and better, and I'm doing it with the support of the League of Word Balloon listeners who subscribe via Patreon. Not necessary. Word Balloon is free, but if you like what I'm doing here, and if you can swing it and help out the cause, I genuinely appreciate it. Patreon.com/wordballoon, or click on the Patreon ad on the front page of wordballoon.com. Thank you greatly, League of Word Balloon listeners. Word Balloon also brought to you by Aftershock Comics. December and Aftershock, man, they are backing up their word in terms of it being a year of reading dangerously with tremendous product from Marguerite Beden and Tim Seeley and Garth Ennis and Donnie Cates, Cullen Bunn, Phil Hester, Stephanie Phillips, Go through their catalog and check out the great graphic novels and graphic novel story arcs of all the great Aftershock creators and their work. Would make a fantastic Christmas present for a comic book reader who's ready to try something different. And that's what Aftershock provides with all of their books and all of their creators. I think they have great genre-bending stories that break the mold and really go their own way. Garth Ennis product, unbelievable. The Art of Jim Starlin would make an amazing Christmas gift from Aftershock. Go to their website and check out the catalog. You'll find full story descriptions, preview pages of art, and also the diamond codes on how to order these books through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. Without further ado, let's get into it. A great conversation with Matthew Rosenberg. Long time coming. I've been a long-time fan. Finally got to really talk to him for at length, face-to-face at Rose City over that weekend in Portland. And he and Charles Soule and Charles's brother and I, we all had dinner together, and then we hung out at a bar and continued the conversation. And it really meant a lot to get to know Matthew better. And, this is another great conversation with Matthew Rosenberg that I'm happy to share with you now on Word Balloon. Long time coming, Matthew Rosenberg. Welcome to Word Balloon. It's a pleasure, dude.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is something that I've wanted to do for a long time, and I'm glad to be here.
Well, mutual, truly. And let me start off as I did last time I talked to Charles Soule on Word Balloon as well. Thanks for hanging out in Rose City. It was really fun hanging with you and Charles's brother and stuff. That was a good time.
Yeah, it was really fun. Got some good food out of it, too, which so...
Absolutely, man. No, it was great. So, and hey, man, you're really kind. You gave me an advanced look at the new Hawkeye book. What's the title of the Hawkeye book again?
It is called Hawkeye FreeFall.
Yes.
Which is a cryptic title, I guess, until you've read all of it. But
yes.
I'm pretty excited about it. So, we're very secretive at Marvel with our books. We keep them very close to the vest, but I thought you are deserving of one. So
you're very kind. Yeah, I didn't want to spoil, so I don't know. You describe as much as you want to. I don't know. I haven't even seen the preview solicit, so you tell me what we can discuss.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, basically, it's Clint Barton, Hawkeye, back in New York, and he's up to his usual sort of shenanigans. He has a run-in with the Hood, who is a villain I love very much. And the run-in doesn't go the way he wanted it to, and in sort of typical Hawkeye fashion, he kind of gets a little bit of an obsession and wants to try and figure out how to get things to go his way. He's Clint's a stubborn guy. And he sort of declares a kind of war on the Hood. And that's sort of the general premise. But then there's also, at the same time, there's someone running around the city in his old costume, in his Ronin costume.
Yes.
And they are dangerous and hurting people and stealing things. And while Clint is on this sort of maybe ill-advised plan to take on the Hood, this Ronin is putting more eyes on Clint, and this mysterious Ronin, and it's very frustrating to Clint that people are sort of looking at him being like, is this you? And
sure.
he's got to be like, no, of course it's not me, like robbing government agencies and things like that. So yeah, I mean, it's my initial pitch on the original pitch document, which I looked at the other day. I proposed calling the book Hawkeye, It's Not Funny Anymore, because I was like, it's about Clint Barton sort of taking jokes too far, and he's stubborn, and he's one of those guys who charges into things head first.
Yes.
Then is a little too proud to be like a messed up, or too proud to back out or ask for help, and so his only recourse is to keep going forward and into a bad situation, and it's just it's a joke taken too far is sort of the premise of the book.
He's got to fight his way out of it. Yeah, classic headstrong Hawkeye. Of course, that's what killed him briefly. In was it Disassembled back in the day with Bendis?
Yeah, it's the end of Disassembled. Yeah, he goes not like this, and he shoots off into a jet engine.
Absolutely. No, this is great, and I love Kate Spencer, but It's like I want, and I don't know if she's going to show up lately, eventually or not. But I love Clint, and I'm always happy to see Clint kind of, foolishly rush ahead. And no, the book is funny, and it's great to see the Hood. I agree with you. Brian K. Vaughan villain, correct?
Yes. Brian K. Vaughan villain, obviously great turn with Bendis.
Sure.
The Bryans have all done their stuff. But the Hood is a character I really love, and I like him as a sort of foil for Hawkeye, just because I feel like there's sort of there's a world where Hawkeye is the Hood and the Hood is Hawkeye. Like, they're both guys who aren't mustache twirling evil dudes. They were both like down on their luck guys who sort of fell in with the bad crowd and sort of tried to make things work, and no one was looking out for them, and both of them became villains. And
yep.
And Hawkeye had, Captain America and the Avengers sort of step in and be like, no, you're better than this. Like, you could help people. And the Hood never had someone do that for him. And so he's still on that path that Hawkeye used to be on. But he's still like, he's not an evil dude per se, but he's a guy who's looking out for himself and the people around him. And, he's cracking jokes and sort of a snarky underdog kind of guy. So in that way, he's sort of like the Looking Glass version of Hawkeye in a fun way. Like, we put them in a lot of rooms together where they can sort of see their reflection in the other and evaluate what that means. But also the Hood is, he's a little out of Hawkeye's weight class. He's got a demon, and he's a little scary, and this isn't it's not a typical Hawkeye villain. He's a little more dangerous. So he's a fun guy to play off. So
yeah, they're both, like you said, they're both kind of street guys, and I'm sure Clint's observation is, oh, fuck this guy, I got this guy, no problem. Whereas the Hood is, like you said, he's got the demon, and it's like, yeah, you don't know what I got under here, man. And they do kind of speak the same language, and you could tell that the tone is there between them. But yeah, I think you're right in terms of the fact that it's like the Hood's just like, yeah, this guy really doesn't know what he's getting into right now with me, and Clint doesn't, and that's cool, and that's always the great complication of Clint is, like you said, he leaps forward before he thinks, and then it's, oh shit, I gotta fight my way out of here and everything. We got a couple other Marvel heroes making appearances. We don't have to say who. We want to save it for people to read in the book. But the Ronin mystery is an intriguing one. Yeah, someone else is in the Ronin suit now. And as Clint points out, too, he's like, well, that's your suit. He's like, yeah, I'm the third guy who's worn this suit, so don't immediately think it may be me.
Yeah, so. Exactly. He's I love, there's so many, Hawkeye's such a funny, weird book to do just because, Matt Fraction and David Aja came in and sort of, and blew it up and broke the mold and did something so defining and so unique that you end up with this very weird math problem of trying to do, you don't want to do the cover band version of their book.
Sure, absolutely not. No.
But also, like, I love it, and I think it works perfectly. And so you are, like, trying to reinvent the wheel once the car's already going, and it's like, it becomes an interesting problem. And a big thing for me was like, well, I want to drag Clint a little more back, plant him a little more firmly in the superhero Marvel universe. Obviously, he's a superhero in the Fraction Aja run, but I was like, I want the guest appearances. I want the supervillains. I want the big heroics back. It's not just Hawkeye on his downtime getting into trouble. This is Hawkeye on the job, on the clock, getting into trouble. So, and it's both. I mean, we have the downtime, and his girlfriend is there, and so there's a lot to play with. But yeah, it's always funny when you take on a book and there's like, the specter of the previous runs sort of hangs over, and I don't think many loom as large as that Hawkeye book as Matt and David's run. So yeah, I mean, we're gonna have a lot of guest stars and a lot of like fun Marvel universe kind of things for fans.
That's excellent, and I agree with you. I think it's good to get him kind of more back in the Marvel universe, because I think Fraction and Aja's run was more kind of Clint on his own, and like you said, downtime of Clint when he's not with the Avengers. What's he doing? But this, I think, is symbiotic to that run without, like you said, being a cover band, which I think is smart. And, it also reminds me of when Fabian Nicieza had a really short run of Hawkeye on his own. And I enjoyed that, too. And even though that was Clint on his own, that felt more Marvel Universe. I don't know if you ever read that run.
Oh, for sure, yeah. When I say, I don't want to be the cover band, symbiotic is a good way to describe it. I think, you sort of go through and Fabian's stuff, and obviously, so many, the Bendis stuff in Avengers, and there's so many people who've touched him, and, Jim McCann's great Hawkeye Mockingbird.
Yes, of course.
Jeff Lemire's run, Kelly Thompson,
yep.
I'm sort of trying to, nod and wink to all of them as much as possible, because I am such a fan of sort of everyone who's touched this character. I think Hawkeye is one of the rare comic characters who has a long, rich history with very few missteps. I think he's just consistently a well-handled character for the most part. And,
yes.
And so, it's a big burden for me. It's a lot of responsibility, but I am trying to sort of acknowledge all the great stuff that's come before as much as I can.
Did you have to, was this just good timing? Did you eventually want to do Hawkeye, or did Marvel come to you and say, hey, how about Hawkeye?
Well, I did, a year and a half ago, I did a book called Tales of Suspense, which was Hawkeye and the Winter Soldier team-up book.
Oh, yeah, excuse me, Jesus, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was sort of a Secret Empire Fallout book,
yep.
Search for Black Widow.
Yep.
And, I don't think the book sold 1 million copies. I mean, I know it didn't sell 1 million copies, but it sold, it didn't exactly set the world on fire in terms of sales, but, I think people internally really liked it, at Marvel, and a lot of fans really, really liked it, and it, Marvel is great at sort of listening and paying attention to sort of noticing the things that are really clicking, even if they're not, selling 1 million copies, but are like, oh, this is resonating with people. And so while that book was going on, Alana Smith, my editor, said to me, well, what do you think about doing a Hawkeye book after this? And I was like, I would do anything to do a Hawkeye book.
That's
and
awesome.
So I immediately sort of put the initial pitch for this together then, and I was like, can we roll straight into it? And she was like, well, there's some things in motion, and he's got to do some other things, and we were figuring a bunch of stuff out, and then I was on Punisher, and Punisher got extended, and then I got Uncanny X-Men, and my plate just really filled up, and,
sure.
And this was a book that's very personal to me and very, very important to me, and we just sort of, I just realized I can't really give it the time it needs and the attention it needs. While I'm doing, I basically wrote 25 issues of Uncanny X-Men in 8 months, and I was like, I can't really be doing, while doing other books, and I was like, I just can't give this what it needs. And, Marvel was awesome and sort of held the book and held it aside, and then as I wrapped Uncanny and Punisher, I said, is Hawkeye still in the cards? And they said, yes, of course. And so, we started going and here we are, January 1st.
That's excellent, man. Yeah. And that's fantastic. And everyone else will be able to see what a great first issue it is. Cause you're hitting the ground running, and that's fantastic. And I did, man. Well, that's what happens with those satellite books sometimes with events. And I was aware of it, and I think I read a few issues of your Winter Soldier and Hawkeye team up. But this felt great, and like I said, very consistent. He really has, like Daredevil, kind of become a character that you can go beyond traditional and really get into his head and do something different. And I think that's cool. And it's the basics are there, like you said, former villain. Former Carney, so you can really get into his past and everything as well. But and that's what makes him a little bit more roguish and less conventional as far as a superhero goes, and that's why he's fun to follow. God, I remember when I was a kid and he was working security, and I forget for what company, and that was his thing when Henry Gritch, I think, kicked him out of the Avengers. He became, so I remember that run. Jesus Christ.
The Sky Cycle, those were the days when he's running around on the Sky Cycle. Yeah.
That's true. I forgot about this guy's cycle. Hilarious. That's great, man. I've always loved Clint Barton. He's a great character. I even remember on the Marvel superhero cartoons, which I saw in reruns in the 70s, but they ran those Iron Man stories.
Yeah.
And Black Widow. And it was Black Widow, I think, when she was even pre-catsuit, when she was just in Russian kind of secret agent kind of clothes.
Yeah, that stuff's so fun.
Well, you got Otto Schmidt doing art on Hawkeye as well. Talk about Otto's contributions to the book.
Oh man, it's Otto's book as far as I'm concerned. He is. It's funny because a lot of DC fans know Otto from his Green Arrow and stuff like that, and so when I talk to people, I'm like, oh, Otto's doing Hawkeye with me. I can tell if they're DC fans because their faces light up because they know what's coming. And the Marvel fans, I mean, some do obviously, but some don't. And I'm just like, oh, January 1st is going to be a big deal when Hawkeye comes out and people see him. He's just been amazing. It's whenever you work with someone who's a new have the new relationship with an artist, it's always it's like the awkward first date where you're trying to figure out how to make the other person smile and how to have a conversation and what they're interested in and what they care about. And it took me a little while to realize I poured over all his other old stuff and looking at his sketchbooks and stuff, and I was just like, oh, Otto, you look for the things that person your artist excels at, and you want to lean into that. And I was like, oh, well, Otto's really, he designs great characters, and you want to just let them pose and be there. And then I was like, actually, he does these great character moments and great acting where you're they're just reaction shots and stuff. And I was like, you really want to lean into sort of those beats. And then I was like, his action is really good. And then I was like, damn it, Otto's really good at everything. And it really is one of those things. He gets the script and he sort of blows it up and sort of rebuilds it in his own way. And it's, when I get his art back, I sort of have to, you always get your art back and then you're rewriting stuff to make it fit better. And I throw out a lot of stuff and rebuild it from the ground up for Otto because he has done such a killer job where you're like, oh, that reaction shot of Clint is so funny, or oh, that beat is so good looking. I don't want dialogue over there. I don't want, I don't want to cover it up. And they're oh, I really want to lean into that or give that a better beat. So I really spent a lot of time rebuilding everything for him, and it comes out better. He's just challenging me to be a better writer with every panel, and it's, that's such an exciting relationship to be in. So I'm very excited for people to see, if nothing else, just to see Otto's work on this and fall in love with him like I have.
Well, I can confirm on both counts, like you said, the emotions on people's faces, with all three counts, the comedy that's in there as well, and amazing action work. Also, a question about that, or I should say just in general, is Hawkeye's kind of plain, I hope this isn't spoiling, Hawkeye's kind of plain clothes throughout the issue. Again, there's tons of action, and there's tons of Hawkeye and stuff. Is that will he be plain clothes throughout, or are we going to see him in the suit, or
the classic suit? No.
The Avengers, I guess, style suit now, the movie style suit, or
yeah, he'll be a little more movie style, maybe, but
it's okay if not.
not the purple mask.
Oh yeah, no. Well, and he's got his shades. I mean, that's the great thing is you can always immediately see it. Oh, it's Hawkeye. There he is. He's not just some blonde dude walking around and stuff like that. But and the colors, his colors at least are reflected in his suit and things like his business suit and things like that.
Yeah. He's got his black and purple theme, and I mean, Otto. A lot of times I just tell Otto, just make him look good, make it cool, and he just really, I actually when I got the book when it was greenlit, when Marvel was like, okay, we're going to do it now, I went out and bought a bow and arrow and took some archery classes and read a lot about archery. So I was like, I should just know what I'm talking about a little bit better. And I've been having a lot of fun with it. But at the end of the day, when I started writing it, I was like, Hawkeye I think would use this kind of bow and this, and then I was like, you know what, Otto's just going to do it better. He's going to draw the thing that he wants to draw, and the thing he wants to draw is going to look awesome. So I'm not going to sit there and nitpick bows and wrist guards and you know, choices of eyewear and clothes. Like I just trust Otto to do it. So
I hear you, man. Well, and it's fun too because if people do miss the classic outfit, I think a couple of the variant covers will satisfy your itch that you know they're represented in that way and stuff. So yeah, I wasn't sure how plain clothes Hawkeye was going to be in the series or not. But no, you're right. Otto's work is amazing.
Yeah, the only clothing input I had is actually a weird joke. There's his girlfriend wears a T-shirt that is a joke that when I wrote Astonishing X-Men, Travel Foreman put Iceman in a T-shirt, and it made me laugh. Like it was just a weird choice that Travel made. And I was like, I want that T-shirt to come back. And so literally Hawkeye owns the same T-shirt that Iceman owns.
That is a callback. I wasn't sure. Now, if people don't know, read the book. But if people do know, you're laughing right now because, yeah, that's outstanding. No, that's great. And let's talk for a second about Night Nurse because how long has that relationship been going on? Forgive me, I didn't realize. Was that happening during your Winter Soldier run as well? No,
that's right now. This is issue 1 of it.
Okay, cool. That's amazing. You put her in there.
Yeah,
that's great.
He's been sort of a bachelor for a little bit, so we're wrapping that up and tying him down, giving him a girlfriend who's can realize that he's being an idiot and patch him up when he needs it. So
are we tipping it that Night Nurse is in there? I apologize if we are.
Oh no, it's fine. I mean, we haven't talked about it, but I don't think that's no one's going to buy or not buy the book for that. I don't think. Maybe they will. I don't know.
Somewhere there's a Night Nurse blog, and right now you have just made their day.
Yeah. So,
this just in.
Some Night Nurse fan is losing their mind finding out that she's in a new book, but Night Nurse is his girlfriend.
That's outstanding, man. No, you know something? I loved when they brought her into the Netflix Marvel universe and everything, and I thought that was really cool. And I love those original Night Nurse issues and stuff. Now, again, Matt, these are the kind of weird little characters that I'm glad are in your brain, and I'm glad that you're bringing them out and everything, because you know, I keep hoping that someone else will want to bring back the Sons of the Dragon in a much more expanded role than whatever they had during, God, I forget which Avengers Bendis arc it was that they were on the street level and stuff and everything. It was, I think it was the House of M. I think it was during House of M that they made a brief appearance back, the Sons of the Tiger. So,
I have a real love for all that stuff. So, whenever I get to pepper any of those street level folks in, I try and do my best.
No, it's cool. It's a great start. And ongoing, or is it going to be like Madrox, where it's going to be only a maxi series?
I don't actually know.
We'll see. Yeah, I understand. No, that's some. Believe me, I understand. That's kind of the premise with Marvel. They kind of see how sales goes, and that kind of dictates how many arcs you're going to do, I guess.
Yeah. It's I came to them, and I'm a big fan of endings of things moving forward and changing, and so I had a story that was a beginning, a middle, and an end in mind, and I said, I can do this, and it's 6 issues. And they were like, that's cool. What happens if it's more than 6 issues? And I said, well, then we're going to go here and do this. But like the initial thing I pitched is the first 6 issues of Hawkeye FreeFall.
That's
and,
cool.
I know that sometimes fans get nervous and they're like, oh, if this book gets canceled, does it cut short? If there's 6 issues of Hawkeye FreeFall, that was what I wanted there to be. If there's more, it's because, people responded well to it. And, we'll see in January what we're going to do, I guess.
Sure.
Hawkeye's not one of those characters like there are those characters who demand, the being on the shelf every month. And Hawkeye's a little bit, like in the Marvel Universe, in the real world, he's a little bit of the underdog. So, getting a Hawkeye book on the shelves is always fun and a rare treat. And, I don't actually know what we're going to do. I've been planning in Hawkeye stuff going forward through 2020, and we'll see if it comes to light. If not, maybe I'll come back and revisit it someplace else. So we'll see.
There's nothing wrong with that. And honestly, I always think that with, and just for a lack of a better description, B and C characters, sometimes it is better just to do like what you did with Jamie Madrox with Multiple Man. I mean, you do. Wasn't it 12 issues?
No, it was.
Was it longer?
No, it's shorter. It's 5.
Oh, okay. Jesus, there you go, man.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I mean, that's the thing. You told a great story. I mean, that's what I think is great. Is like a DC example. Like, hey, tell a great Ray Palmer Adams story, and and it's 6 issues is fine. I mean, everything can't be an ongoing. It's okay.
Yeah,
and that's good.
I always think it's interesting because obviously there's all types of comic fans and and they sort of view things differently and for me like I say to people all the time like they're like, oh, why can't it be an ongoing? It doesn't feel important. And I'm like, is that what you say when you walk out of a movie? That it's like, why couldn't this be a TV show so there'd be more of it? Like the story you have to tell is the story you have to tell, and like if it's 6 issues or 2 hours or if it's 20 issues or 30 episodes of TV, like that's the story you have to tell. And I think there's no shame in a miniseries. I love a miniseries. I think the big thing though is that I think for a lot of years fans really had this idea that what they say, the term I hear a lot is miniseries don't matter. And
yes,
and
I've heard that.
I always think it's a funny complaint because my takeaway has always been like, well, did you enjoy it? Then it mattered. If you didn't like it, then it doesn't matter to you. But I understand the sentiment that like the big things happen in the main books and in ongoings, and miniseries are just sort of placeholders. And I think that sentiment is something that is a little bit outdated in today's comic climate.
Agreed. Yeah.
But I also think, especially sort of my generation of writers, we've really come out to try and kill that notion. And I think like people like me and Donnie Cates and Chip Zdarsky and Kelly Thompson and Ed Brisson, like we all started at Marvel around the same time, and we're all doing miniseries where we do want to change the status quo of characters, where we do want to affect things that have ramifications for the universe, and just be like, every book matters. Like if you pay $4 for a comic, it's going to matter. We're going to make it something that changes things, that has an impact, that hits hard. And I think that's a conscious decision on sort of all of our parts to like take back the prestige of the miniseries, as it were. So that's definitely a goal in Hawkeye. If we only end up doing 6 issues, like this is a heavy journey for Clint. Like we're going to have a lot of stuff going in that I think people are going to really dig, and where he ends at the end of this is not necessarily where he starts. So I'm excited for people to check that out.
I don't blame you, and I think you look at the air quote A-listers and stuff, and a lot of their best stories are only 5 or 6 issues. And I mean, I think back to Kraven's Last Hunt for Spider-Man, or of course Born Again, Daredevil, and that's the thing. So I do think, as much as we like a good long run, it's usually those single stories within the runs that obviously do stand out, and they're usually 6 to 8 issues. Sometimes they're 12 issues. Yep. But and I understand. And well, and again, another one, and I was just tapping to confirm it and stuff, because I'm like, I think I read Matt's Kingpin, and of course I did, man, from 2 years ago, Born Against, and that's what I was just looking up right now to confirm it, everything. And you did a great job on the Kingpin, man.
Thank you. Yeah, that was just I guess that's 5 issues that I
makes
did.
Sense. Yeah, it was 5 issues. Yes.
Yeah, and that's I think we had plans to go a little further if needed, and actually we were going to tie into Daredevil, and then there were some swerves and some changes, and Charles, I think, changed something in the way he was doing Daredevil, which I think was a really smart choice. But it sort of meant that at the end of the day, like, there wasn't as much of a need for a Kingpin book. Charles was very, very sweet, and I was just starting, and Charles has always been super kind and supportive to me, and I owe him a lot. And I remember he was like, hey, this thing that you're going to tie into in Daredevil, like, we may not do it. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, oh, I get what he's telling me. So we only ended up doing the 5 issues, but yeah, I'm really proud of that book. I mean, it's a, I think, I was talking about this with someone the other day that, like, the Marvel I grew up reading, I grew up in New York, and I grew up, very much the there's the Stan Lee quote that Marvel is the world outside your window. And that to me was like a very literal kind of thing because
sure.
I would see the places in the books. Like I could recognize streets and buildings and, I knew where Avengers Mansion was and things like that. And so in a lot of ways, like I love the big cosmic stuff and the crazy, huge things. But in a lot of ways, like the characters I really loved were, a little more grounded and, the Spider-Mans and Daredevils and Moon Knights and Ghost Riders and people like that, where it's like, I mean, maybe not Ghost Rider, but the rest of them are like people you could see on the street and people you could do this and you'd see the Punisher like riding the subway in his book and I'd be like, oh my God, like, yeah, I ride that subway. Like I also take the 9 train. So, that to me, and I think Marvel, there's a move now, especially with the movies being so huge and such spectacles. I think the books are also like these larger than life spectacles. And I think there's sort of in some ways there's a race to be like, can we be bigger than the movie? Can we outdo the movie? And I get that, and I think the comics do an amazing job, and I still like, I love the Marvel movies, but the comics is still for me like that's where the big jaw-dropping moments are born. But I do miss those sort of street level ground level views of the universe, and I love like stopping a bank robber. I love like stopping a mugging, and that's something that I try and get back to when I can in the Marvel universe. And that Kingpin book was that for me. It was not a lot of over the top superheroes and stuff like that. It's the story of a guy in a power struggle for New York City. It's a very much a could be ripped from the headlines kind of tale.
Absolutely, man. No, and that's the strength of the Kingpin is his influence over New York, both through legitimate, threads and the underworld as well. And I've loved that about the Kingpin since the Frank Miller transformation. And I think there are a lot of great urban Kingpin stories to be told. So right. I'm always happy. God, I remember when Bruce Jones was doing the Kingpin origin story. A long time ago and stuff. Yeah. And also, I'm the same way in that. I mean, really, when you go back to, like you said, Moon Knight, I remember, like, that was like my, when it was in the specialty shops, and there really was that distinction between the newsstand and the specialty shops, which, of course, now are the dominant distributor of comics and stuff. But, yeah, it was just like, no, you wanted those urban kind of stories that had that great feeling and everything. And that's the great thing is that Marvel really has always done so well in exploiting its heroes and villains of the streets in New York. Did you see that Travel Channel special when they went around New York and kind of pointed out all the, like, okay, well, like you said, Avengers Mansion and stuff probably is based on this. And again, not being a native, I couldn't tell you what the mansion is. But I love when they
the mansion is the Frick Museum.
That's right. That's right. Now I remember the name. Yes, that's fantastic.
Yeah. No, I never saw that. I would love to see that. There's I know a lot of the sort of the places and Marvel Universe, but yeah, I should check that out.
Every time I go to New York, I'm always excited because there's all the Marvel stuff, and also as I walk to the Javits Center through Ninth Avenue, I believe, there's like a brownstone that has a great plaque that it's like, this is where Rex Stout based Nero Wolfe's brownstone and stuff, and I'm like, oh, that's that's fantastic, man. And I'm a big mystery novel reader as well, so certainly I know my Nero Wolfe and everything. So that's terrific. Well, and also, let's go back and talk about the Multiple Man miniseries, because that was really great, and that's really when, I mean, I read, and I want to talk about your Black Mask stuff as well, but that's when I was like, oh, look at this, look what Matthew's doing, this is cool.
Multiple Man's a weird one. It's the sort of that's sort of the cult book that I got to write at Marvel. The one that people are like, why? How did this happen? Why did this happen?
Thank God it happened, man. Because a lot of these, like you said earlier, when you didn't know about, and forgive me for interrupting, but like you said, you're not sure. We'll see how long Hawkeye goes. And I was going to make the point earlier when Rick Remender was like, "Hey, I'm doing a Dr. Voodoo ongoing," and everyone was like, "Yay!" But the sales weren't that great for issue 1, so suddenly it was a miniseries, and it's like, oh man, what happened, dude?
So, I think Marvel. I'm a huge Marvel nerd and just like try and consume so much Marvel stuff all the time. And, you know, you find these little pockets where you're like, how did this book happen? Like, why did this exist? And like, I love that stuff. I really can't get enough of those books. And, you know, there are these weird pockets where you're just like, why was the Thunderbolts an underground like fight club for a little bit? Or like, why was there an X-Force book that opened with all of them dying and then they're just a new team that's like a reality, you know, like all these things where you're just like, these are great, weird things that people don't, you know, that aren't spotlight stealers.
Sure.
And I sort of, that's what I wanted Multiple Man to be, is just sort of in that corner of like, in a few years, having people be like, did you ever read the Multiple Man comic? That was real weird. But yeah, I mean, I'd done Phoenix Resurrection, for Marvel, and that did very well and sold well, and people at the company, I think, really liked it. And they sort of came to me and were like, you know, good job, kid. What do you want to do? And I said, oh yeah, I want to bring back Multiple Man. And I remember there was like a long pause as they tried to like
process.
And then just a real like, oh, he's an idiot. Like, let's spell this out for him. And I got the talk where I was like, no, you really have a ticket to ride here. Like, what do you want? Like, are you interested in New Mutants? Are you interested in relaunching X Factor? Like, would you want to do an X-Force book? Like, another X-Men title? Like, what are you interested in? And I was like, yeah, I want to do a Multiple Man miniseries. And they were like, the frustration was very palpable. But I said to them, I was like, look, I get what you're saying, and I really appreciate the interest, but like, whether I do it or not, like, you're going to have an X-Force coming up. You're going to have a New Mutants at some point. You're going to have all these things. And I was like, but you guys killed Multiple Man. And no one's going to bring him back unless someone has to really fight to bring him back. And like, I was like, if I have this, get out of jail free card to do what I want, like, I understand career-wise why it's probably smarter to be like, yeah, I want to do, X-Men Purple or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, no, I want to use this card to get me the thing that won't happen otherwise. And, I think they frustratingly relented, and, Multiple Man was born. And, I think Jordan White wasn't the original editor, but he inherited the book when Christina Harrington left Marvel.
Okay.
And, he was, Christina was awesome and did a great job of like, we'd be on the phone for 2 hours and she'd be like, does this make sense? And I'd be like, I'm not 100% sure it makes sense. Like, and I had all like, cause it's a time travel book, but it's also about a guy who replicates himself over and over and then he's traveling through time. And, I think in my initial pitch for the book, I was like, there's only one character. Like, he's the only person who appears in it. It's just various iterations of him from various times. And I think initially what I wanted was that the whole thing starts and he shows up and there's an evil Multiple Man who has an army and he tries to take over the world and he ends up killing and absorbing himself, and at the end he dies again. And the whole thing, because there's time travel, takes place over 30 seconds. So it opens with like him appearing and sort of ends with him vanishing, and then the last page would be like the X-Men looking out their window being like, what just happened? Like, did you guys hear that? And that's the whole story, but it was about like the end of the world and how Multiple Man saved the world. But that was too, I think that was a bridge too far for everybody, myself included, to like kill him at the end. And but we're pretty close to that. I mean, most of the characters in the book are Multiple Man, and it really does take place over the course of like 20 minutes. It's a very weird book. But it was funny because like Christina and me worked out really hard to make it make sense, and I had all these like crazy person hand drawn charts and of like, this timeline touches this timeline here, and then this timeline is completely separate, but it's a circle and it's a loop and all stuff. Yeah. And then Christina left and Jordan inherited it. And I think Jordan was he was awesome and it was such a great fit, but he was also just like real baffled by it, I think, in a great way, where he's like, we're already into it. Like, issues are coming out. I'm not sure it makes sense, but like, let's go. Let's see if we can make this work. And
fantastic.
Yeah. And, he was a great editor and did an awesome job of sort of steering the ship, but it was very funny to go to have that book handed off to someone else because they were like, I missed the part where this was explained, so let's just go.
Well, and honestly, now Christina sounds like that kind of editor. Jordan, I know, is already the kind of editor I'm about to describe. The template for that as I got to start doing podcasting and talking to Marvel people was Mark Paniccia, and I don't even know if Mark's even still there or not.
Oh yeah, Mark's a Star Wars.
Okay, because those are like the great under the radar books. While the big event is going on and all the A books are going on, there's a couple editors like Christina, like Jordan, and Mark that they get the weird books, and that's fine because they kind of let those books breathe, and give you guys the room to tell your story and be like, we're not going to get a million readers, but the pocket of readers are really going to appreciate this book, and and sometimes big books end up being cult books like Next Wave. Yeah. I think Next Wave, and then again, that's a weird book as well that you're just like, oh yeah, everybody remember that one? That was great. And I really do think that underneath all the events and stuff like that, I really think these books are crucial. And who knows, they might be tickling, and not that that's the intent, but that's the stuff that may tickle the filmmaker or somebody, and especially now that Feige's kind of looking at everything.
Sure.
I think that, I just think that might even attract attention and would make an interesting, like you said, like a little movie or something like that. And like I said, not with the intent of doing that. Have you, was CB always editor-in-chief since you broke through, or did you have a little bit of Axel before CB?
No, I was with Axel for a while.
Okay. I love Axel, by the way, and truly, I was sad that, circumstances led to him getting let go. I look forward to talking to him now that he's at AWA.
Sure,
I think he's a really smart guy. And by the same token, love CB, have from day one.
Of course. Yeah, I love Axel. Axel was the editor-in-chief who was there when I started and was great and a great editor. But I've known CB since, CB is the guy that everybody knows. He's the kind face of Marvel. And so, when I was a kid who was still unpublished and self-publishing stuff, I met CB and he was always, there to listen and say how you doing. And so, he was a big part of my getting into the company when I got in, was a vote of confidence from CB because he knew me around. He knew me from conventions and always pestering him and stuff. So yeah, I was, I love Axel very much and I owe him so much, but, CB is the same way. CB is, I wouldn't be at Marvel if it weren't for CB for sure.
That's cool. Well, and, I don't know, have you guys had a recent retreat, right? In the last month or so?
Yeah, beginning of October.
Oh, okay. There you go, and everything.
End of September? Yeah. It's all a blur. Beginning of October, I think. Yeah. Okay,
and I don't know if they made the announcement by that point of Feige, or if you guys already knew internally that Feige was going to kind of be overseeing anything. Has the change like that, has that impacted anything yet as far as your stuff?
No. I don't. Okay. I don't. I'm just telling tales out of school because I don't really know. But I can't imagine. The books are just doing well and things are running smoothly and CB and Tom and everybody, John Nee and Dan Buckley, everyone is doing, from my point of view, and I don't know, but it seems like everyone is doing, everything's firing on all cylinders and people are really excited and enthusiastic, and I can't imagine anyone wanting to come in and mess with that formula. I think that's not really in the cards. I think everyone involved is smart enough to know to let the people who are good at what they do what they do. So yeah,
that's cool. I'm not looking for dirt necessarily. Honestly, I was really just and truly, I feel the same way. I think, I just wanted to know, just in terms of, if there is another voice in the room now, or, and again, God, look. Everyone's proven their record. Marvel's still doing great publishing wise, but certainly I don't think it's a bad thing that Kevin Feige is suddenly, if he truly winds up in the room or has whatever impact, because again, there's 11 years of big box office success that nobody can deny. He's clearly a Marvel fan.
For sure, yeah. I think it's a again, all of this so far above my pay grade, but like,
sure,
I think it's an exciting thing just to bring what Marvel Studios does so well and what Marvel Publishing does so well and make those connect, because like a lot of what Studios does, most of what Studios does is built out of what publishing does, and so having a good synergy is going to be very cool. But like, I don't think it's hard for anyone to look at the current Marvel publishing slate and be looking at things like Absolute Carnage or House of X and Powers of 10 or War of the Realms and be like, oh, there's so much that's working so well right now and would work on the big screen and would work on a Disney Plus or a Hulu or whatever, that I would hope that everyone involved sees and respects how much blood, sweat, and tears the people who run Marvel Publishing put into it, and the reward of like how good everything has been. I mean, the books have been, in my mind, just really, really stellar across the line. There are so many books that I think we're going to look back and your Immortal Hulks and
sure, definitely.
The like books like that where you're just going to look back and Chip's Daredevil and just be like, these are classic, iconic runs of these characters, and they're all happening at once. It's really fun and exciting to be there.
Yep. Jason's Thor. I mean, good Lord.
Yeah. I mean, Jason's Thor, we already know is going to be, at least in some part, ending up on the big screen.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that'll be fun. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think that's, and again, something, I always want to point out that Jason handled, handing things over to a legacy Thor the best way, because it was great reading Jane's story, but we didn't lose the Odin son story in the meantime, and they were both right there happening at the same time, and it was like, okay, fine, because I think that was just the one, in generally speaking, the one mistake in terms of, I don't think anyone disliked any of the legacy characters. It was just like, don't give me Amadeus Cho as the Hulk without Bruce Banner being there. Don't kill off Bruce Banner. Don't take him off screen. Even Secret Empire, I always knew Cap was, we all knew Steve was going to eventually be normal again and stuff like that. It's just, it's like, don't. Yeah, I mean, I've told Bendis that when it comes to Riri Williams and Ironheart and everything. I'm like, Riri's a great character. I just didn't like Tony physically being away. I know he was the AI in her suit, but I'm like, it just wasn't the same. So I don't know. Again, I think Jason handled it well. And I agree with you that we're in the midst of a lot of great runs happening right now at Marvel. So it's very cool, very cool.
Yeah, I would say like for the legacy character stuff, it's. I have a very, I grew up reading and, some of it through back issues, but like, for me, a lot of the comics I loved was, I came around in a time when characters were replaced a lot, when Rhodey was Iron Man and, when US Agent was Captain America. And so for me, like, the stuff seemed very organic and natural to me that like, Riri's Iron Man, because Danny Ketch was my Ghost Rider before Johnny Blaze was my Ghost Rider. Like, there's a lot of that for me.
That's true.
And so, I think people of a certain age, like, their characters were a little more based on a title than who's inside the suit. And so I never batted an eye on any of that stuff. And obviously I knew, Steve will be back and Tony will be back and Bruce will be back and we'll have those guys. And so I could really just appreciate it as like, well, let's just look at the craft of these stories. And I love all those characters. I love Amadeus and Riri and Evil Steve. I think Evil Steve is such a good character.
I'm glad they didn't kill him off. I got to be honest, because it is good having a dark Steve Rogers out there.
For sure. I threw him in my Punisher run as like Frank Castle wants to go after him, and Nick Spencer was like, "You're not going to kill him, right?" And I was like, "No, I love him. I think he's great. I think he's such a good, like, evil Steve Rogers is such a, like, I mean, it's the classic He-Man where it's just like, oh, it's there, the evil He-Man is just He-Man again, but without a face. It's like, this is what we're dealing with. It's just so archetypal and in such a fun way that, like, I was like, I would never kill him. I want him in the book because I love him, not because I want to put him in the ground. And Nick was like, okay, just don't kill him. I think Nick's really proud of that, and he should be. I think it's a great character.
Hey man, I'll tell you, man, I had Nick on a million times during Secret Empire because and especially every time there was a yell against what he was doing, I'm like, hey, it's a story, calm down.
Yeah.
It's, I'm like, it's going to be fine. Cap will come back and be normal again. Don't worry. But it was intriguing. It was interesting. And I thought it was a good choice not to kill him. I'm like, that's even scarier that he's still around and can absolutely be a threat. And I'm glad you used him and stuff. Your Punisher run was great. Lots of great stories. And I've enjoyed everything you've done at Marvel. And then it was fun to dip back because I remember when 4 Kids Walk Into a Bank was making such big noise over at Black Mask. But before we get to that, tell me about your self-published comics. It's like with Brisson, with a lot of his short little crime stories that he was doing in his collections. I came to those late, and I'm like, oh, these are fantastic. Tell me about your indie stuff.
Well, my indie stuff is unlike Brisson's, not.
Don't look for it, John.
I spend a lot of time, a rookie mistake I made for sure was I was really obsessed with having a publisher for too long, and so I was spending a lot of effort into making pitches instead of actually just telling stories.
Oh, okay.
And that to me was, if I could do it over, I would have, less non-greenlit pitches in my desk drawer and more self-published stories, but when did it occur to you to go from pitch to like, all right, this isn't working, let's do full stories? I just was in I was really kind of broken from pitching. It's really hard, like aspiring writers, like people trying to break in, trying to do stuff. Like there are, a dozen on a good year, a dozen publishers who can pay you to make a book, who can pay for it.
Yeah.
So there's essentially, obviously there's a process and there's editors and there's different people at companies, but essentially there's a dozen people who can pay you to do this job. And, you make something and you put a lot of time into it. And for me, I was, working a day job and, I had a record collection. I sold most of it. I had a big game collection. I sold most of it to pay artists. I just was like, I have to do this. I stopped buying comics for a while. I stopped, I was living as cheap as I could to pay for artists. And I'd find an artist, I'd track them down, I'd be excited, and I'd tell them the story, and this sort of courtship dance, and I'd do all that stuff, and then, we'd make a 10-page thing that I was really excited about. And at the end of the day, I'm essentially sending it to those 12 people to see if they want to do it, and 11 of them never get back to me, and one of them just goes, no. And like, that's it. That's the end of 6 months of work, is one no and 11 deafening silences. And, I now that I'm in the industry, I understand like how much editors and publishers are overworked, how much they're flooded by stuff, how impossible it is to sort of cut through the noise of that, and how, I think anybody who sort of gets something published, it's a minor miracle and good for them. And, because these editors are, working their butts off just to keep the books they are already doing afloat, like going out and discovering new stuff is really, going above and beyond. But I just hit a point where I was like, I've been doing this for a couple of years, and I have almost nothing to show for it except for a desk drawer full of like kind of cool comic pitches, and I don't know what to do. And so I went out and I did my buddy Patrick Kinlan and I, we were co-writing stuff, and we were, like each developing our own thing and sort of putting our names on it and putting each other's names on it and then doing stuff together. And we ended up, we did a web comic called Menu that was just short stories, so we could actually have something that came out, and then we would put them out in issues and self-publish. And my first book, I did a book called We Can Never Go Home that started self-publishing it first.
Oh, okay.
So there's 2 issues of that kicking around that have different art. There's a different artist on those. And yeah, I just started going to cons and selling those at a table and doing that for a while before I sort of fell into Black Mask and was lucky enough to sort of link up with them as they started. So,
is that what they noticed? Was We Can Never Go Home?
Yeah, I mean, I showed that to them, but no, in reality, they were doing an anthology. They were doing the Occupy Comics anthology, which was
oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, that was going to be their first thing, and I was, in New York and knew a bunch of people in the Occupy movement and sort of, like on the fringes of some of that stuff, and I sort of harassed them because I knew.
Remind people real fast, Matt, about Occupy Comics, because, yes, I remember that movie.
Sure, yeah. It ended up being 3 oversized issues, and now there's a trade that you can dig up. That's really worth the read, but it's, in the year that the Occupy Wall Street and the Occupy movement was happening, Black Mask, it sort of was the inspiration for Black Mask in some ways, was just this idea of like a populist movement and a grassroots political thing that was not based on actual politics, but actually just about sort of human decency and human rights and the way we treat each other. And that was sort of what Occupy Wall Street was about. Was sort of about I don't want to speak for them.
Yeah, it was more apolitical, and you're right. It was more societal in terms of the 99% and then the 1% and everything.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It was a social movement more than a movement, and Black Mask, I think, was really inspired by that, and so they put together an anthology that was a bunch of different creators doing stories that were, their guidelines were like, if you're for the movement, if you're against the movement, we just want voices talking about this. We think it's a discussion, and so I sort of harassed them enough that they let me do a 3-page story in there. And that was going to be my first published thing, but at the same time, I ended up hooking up with the Wu-Tang Clan, and they had me asked me to do a comic with them with RZA and Ghostface Killer from the Wu-Tang Clan. And so I had this comic that had a good pedigree and big names attached, but no publisher. And so I was already talking to Black Mask about being in Occupy Comics, and I was like, hey, I also have this. Would you be interested? And they were like, yeah, of course, sure.
Wow.
So that was a book called 12 Reasons to Die.
Yes.
And that's my first published book. It's actually technically, I believe, the first book at Black Mask because there was a diamond snafu, and so Occupy Comics, I think, was delayed a week, and so 12 Reasons to Die ended up hitting stores first, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
So I'm the first book at Black Mask, and it's my first published thing. So.
And tell me about working with the Wu-Tang Clan. That's fantastic. Seriously, man, as the least cool white guy that you know, I've always appreciated the Wu-Tang Clan.
Sure.
So tell me about those guys, because truly, every time, man, when they're in the Jarmusch movie, Coffee and Cigarettes, and with Bill Murray, yo, Bill Murray,
yeah.
it's brilliant, and everything they've done. Including their music, but outside their music, I'm like, this is fantastic. I'm so glad these guys are storytellers this way. This is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're just really, I mean, I don't know all of them, obviously, like RZA and Ghost, like,
okay.
I used to work in the music business, and when I left the music industry to do comics, I think someone from the music business they were looking for someone who knew comics, but also would understand some of the basics of the music business and how it works.
Yeah.
And so I got a call from one of their manager people who was just like, hey, can I take you to lunch? I want to talk to you about a comic book thing. And I was like, sure. And, I was broke enough. I was working in a comic book store at the time and was broke enough that he could have just been like, can I take you to lunch? And then whatever he says after doesn't matter. Because I was like, oh, free lunch from there. And I ended up going to lunch with him, and I started talking to him about comics for a while, and then at the end, it was all very sort of like clandestine, and at the end I was like, hey man, you really just got to tell me what this is. And he was like, okay, so RZA's doing an album with Ghostface, and they want to have this comic. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So everything I told you, ignore completely, because the ground rules for, what will work with the Wu-Tang Clan is very different than the ground rules for what will work with, like random musician or artist. And so we just kept talking for a while about stuff, and I was like, they wanted to do I think a single issue that would pack into a record, and I was like, why don't you, instead of making a product that's a record add-on, make a comic book that promotes the record, and
Sure.
you could. There's a thing that could be costing you money. Like you could make a billboard, or you could make something to sell that works as a billboard. And they were like very into that idea. So I pitched them, and at that point they were like, yeah, do you want to write it? And so I ended up writing it with, my buddy Patrick Kinlan and, RZA and Adrian Young, who ended up producing the record. Like it was sort of RZA and Adrian's story, and then me and Patrick sort of made it work. And yeah, the book is very strange. It's I haven't read it in a long time. It reads like a super ambitious first comic, I think is the nicest way I could put it. 'Cause it's two separate stories that sort of connect. And, initially what they wanted, they were like, yeah, it starts off as a crime story and then it becomes a horror story. And I was like, that's really hard to do in comic books because you have to get people coming back every month. It's not like a movie where like you can sit down and watch a gangster for an hour and then if he turns into a ghost, you're already in the seat. I was like, we're going to lose the crime people at issue 3 and we're never going to have gotten the horror people because they don't read crime comics.
Right, they're not reading crime comics. Yeah.
And so I was like, we need both. So we ended up splitting the book into 2 different stories. There's 2 10-page stories and you only realize halfway through, I think there's going to be spoilers, but I think that's okay at this point. In issue 5, you realize that the short ghost stories that you've been reading as the sort of B story are actually being told to the protagonist of the crime story. And, it's a whole sort of elaborate, like a story within a story, that kind of thing that comes out of it. But that was sort of a fun way to make it work. But also we didn't have an artist who could do, our timeline was really tight because we were tied into a record. And so we needed to go really quickly. And I didn't have someone who could do 20 pages, 40 pages. I think we needed 60 pages done in like 2 months and we didn't have that. And so I was like, well, we're going to do lots of different short stories and move it around. And if it's short stories, I can get a few names attached. So like the art is really, if people want to check out the book at some point, like it's worth it for the art just because, Joel Jones, Ron Wimberly, Tim Seeley,
Jesus, yeah.
Nate Powell does stuff.
Outstanding.
Yeah, there's, I think, at the end of it, there's like 24, 26 artists on it, and it's
goddamn.
Yeah, and it's all people whose stuff I just loved and begged to do it, and it came out really cool, and I'm very very proud of that aspect of it, of sort of the project management aspect. I'm really pleased with, and it came out and it was weird, and the reaction was weird, and as you'd expect, and I have a lot of Wu-Tang stories that are maybe off-air stories.
All right, fair enough. I understand. But were the story? I'm sorry. I mean, continue your thought, and then I'll ask a question.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, and then from there, that opened some doors, and it did well enough for Black Mask that they were willing to take another chance on me. But I also got to co-write a record with Ghostface Killah, so there's a sort of spiritual sequel that I am the co-writer on, that also and the art director on the LP, and it's a really beautiful LP. I'm very proud of that. It's all I designed the LP to be, the lyric sheet is like, because every song it's one story, and so every song is like a chapter. And I sort of plotted all the chapters and where it would go, and then every page of the lyric sheet is. I wanted to read like those old record read along books you get as a kid.
Oh yeah.
So like for every song, there's a 2-page spread of art, of comic art, and it's David Lapham did a 2-page spread, and Michael Walsh and Ramon Villalobos, Tyler Boss, and it's all just this cool art to go along with this Ghostface album. Called 36 Seasons. And so, yeah, that's the weird story of why I wrote co-wrote a rap record.
That's fantastic. Okay, because I was going to ask if 12 Reasons to Die was, like, were the stories also reflected in that an album by Wu-Tang called 12 Reasons to Die. I wasn't sure.
there's an album called 12 Reasons to Die this is where it gets weird. There's an album called 12 Reasons to Die that is the story, and then the comic is sort of that story fleshed out and expanded. It sort of sets some stuff up, and it goes before and after the album. But that album is a Ghostface Killah story in 12 acts or whatever. And then
36.
Yeah. Well,
then or no, you tell me. Yeah, what's the sequence?
Well, there's a weird thing because there were multiple parties involved in 12 Reasons to Die, and different parties wanted different things, and Ghostface, to his credit, is sort of a very chill dude and is amenable to everybody. So there's a album that Adrian Young did. Adrian Young, who's a brilliant producer and musician, he put together.
Did I lose you?
No, am I gone?
Oh, you dropped out. So Adrian put out an album. Continue.
Oh yeah, so Adrian Adrian was the brains in a lot of ways. There's Adrian and RZA were the sort of driving force behind the original 12 Reasons to Die. Okay. And then and Adrian's great. He did the music for the Luke Cage TV show on Netflix.
Oh sure, God, what a great soundtrack. Yeah.
He's an amazing producer, amazing musician. And he wanted to do a sequel to 12 Reasons to Die, which he wanted to call 12 Reasons to Die 2.
Okay.
And then other people involved wanted to do a sequel to 12 Reasons to Die that was a little more of a spiritual sequel. And so I'm always like, yeah, I did a record, and there's 12 Reasons to Die, which I did the comic for, and then there's 12 Reasons to Die 2, which I didn't work on, and then there's a record called 36 Seasons, which is are sort of the alternate sequel to 12 Reasons to Die. It's not,
I'm with you.
Not a direct sequel, but it's musically a sort of spiritual sequel. So
that's amazing, man. That's like with Lemire and God, the poor guy that died from, I want to say, wasn't it The Replacements? Gordon.
Tragically Hip.
Yeah, Tragically Hip. Of course it was Tragically Hip. Shame on me. I honestly, Chicago was like their second home.
Yeah.
Because they were here constantly in the 90s and stuff, and I was working at WXRT, the radio station that always promoted them and stuff. Yeah, Secret Path. You know, that project was so great. Honestly, it is so great when comics and music really do merge, and we get some really cool stuff like this. So that's incredible. And yeah, Jesus. So what years were you in the music industry?
Oh man, too long, too many years. I don't know. I mean, when I was a senior in high school, a band, I didn't know them. They came to my town, and I was talking to them, and they were like, "Yeah, our tour manager, merch guy, whatever, is sick. We're sending him home. We don't have anyone to go on tour." And I was like, "I'll go," and I ended up the next day, packing a bag and meeting them and getting in their van and was gone.
Joining the circus. You're Clint Barton. There.
Yeah. And I was gone for 2 months in the middle of my senior year at high school.
That band was?
That band is a weird non-footnote for anyone who cares, but it was a band called Zoinks from. Okay, all right. Sort of a pop punk kind of thing.
Fun.
Great songwriters. They were on a really fun tour with a bunch of bands that I really liked. There was a band called Discount who ended up breaking into a bunch of different other bands that I liked, but most notably Allison went on to form The Kills. And
cool.
I think At the Drive-In played some of the shows, and I was a big At the Drive-In fan after that. Like, that was on their first record. And yeah, there was a bunch of bands that I really liked, My Pal Trigger and Dillinger Fools.
Oh, yeah.
It was just like sort of traveling 2 months on, seeing the whole country from the backseat of a van. I was just a New York City kid who hadn't been to a lot of places. And then I came home and immediately sort of jumped in another van, or went back and finished my schoolwork so I could graduate. Then jumped into another van, and sort of from there I was putting out records and, started a record label with my roommate at the time, and then that record label sort of collapsed, and we started a different record label, and, then my girlfriend started working on the record label with me, and then I was going out and with bands where I could actually get paid and make money. So, Yeah, I was doing all sorts of stuff, and I managed a record store for a little bit on St. Mark's Place, and
Cool.
yeah, just sort of all the things you can do in the music business that don't involve having musical ability. So,
Well, that's amazing because I was a music DJ for years before I got into talk, and I was really lucky. I worked at a small market radio station, but radio and records was an industry, kind of, and it amazes me that Billboard still exists, given where the music business is.
sure.
And I really was around for the collapse of, with Napster and everything, the labels, and just, the importance of labels. So, yeah, I'm assuming that, and again, given your age and stuff like that, I'm assuming this is all, stuff in the 2000s.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I was sadly part of, I started in radio in 85. So I was there for kind of like the last round of like the big labels and stuff and the big impact.
For sure.
And watched it all die in the 90s. I truly, I assumed I would be in the music business, and obviously I wasn't, and luckily transitioned in the 90s into talk radio and everything, but still was observing as, things changed, and it was your deal with Live Nation was much more important than your deal with, RCA or any label you could, old school label you can think of.
Sure.
But then it was fun seeing labels like Bloodshot here in Chicago develop, and
Sure.
some of the other smaller labels and everything, and the vinyl resurgence was always fun to watch and continues to be and everything. So yeah, it's an amazing world, and in a lot of ways, and you tell me if I'm incorrect, the power has finally at least gone back to the artists. And being able to, kind of, on the big level, certainly, like I said, Live Nation and some of these other bigger concert promoters are still kind of running things.
Sure.
But it just does seem to me that an independent band can do quite well.
Yeah,
doing their own thing. Yeah, tell me.
I think yes and no.
Okay.
For me, the thing, it's funny because comics, I always say that comics is very much like the music business, but 15 years behind it. Which sort of, in terms of origins kind of actually tracks and makes sense. But, I think the rise of digital, when I was in the music business, like the rise of digital, the thing that everyone said when they were promoting MP3s and digital was that it was going to be the great democratizer, that it was going to be, level the playing field. And I just knew enough about corporations and the way that worked to be like, yeah, theoretically it is, but it won't end up being that way. Like the biggest bands will have ways to game the system and be the biggest bands on digital. And, that remained true, that it's, obviously there are people who break out with their, Bandcamp page or posting their video on YouTube or whatever.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like the people who had their hands in driving the stuff in the 80s and the 90s still have their hands in a lot of those pots.
Sure.
But yeah, I think the tool set is a lot better. If you were a band and had to record a demo tape, like there wasn't really a way to get that out, and now there is. So that in the same way is good. I think is definitely an improvement, and that is sort of in some ways the promise of it. But obviously you have, your Spotify's and your YouTubes, that the move away from owning physical media and the move away from owning music is sort of the first shot of what will be the 21st century's. Like, I think one of the most important fights of the 21st century is going to be the idea that, you have to pay for art or art won't exist. And,
right.
I'm never one to be like, own stuff, buy stuff, but the fact of the matter is, like, music is going to go away if people don't start buying more of it, just because Spotify pays you 1/1000th of a cent for every time you listen to a record, and people can't make a living off that. And there is a transition towards more touring acts, and ticket prices go up and merchandise prices go up and things like that. And but it is a scary world, and it's a terrifying idea. And I think you see it now. You see the sort of generation that grew up on Napster and things like that. Their relationship to art and media is very different than previous generations, and it's, as an artist and someone who grew up around people who need to make their living off people willing to pay for art, without a new structure in place to replace the idea that you should buy a record or buy a book or pay for a movie, a lot of this is just not going to be possible in the future.
I understand. The band, of course, I'm sure you're well aware, Pomplamoose, who was doing so well with, YouTube's original ad sharing rate and everything, and then YouTube changed the rules, and that's why Jack Conte from Pomplamoose created Patreon.
Yeah,
but guess what? I'm a direct beneficiary from Jack's ingenuity. And I hear it. It's funny, man, because again, you listed all the different ways people are getting music this way. I didn't hear radio in there, and I get it because again, I watched the collapse. Radio homogenized itself out of relevance. I mean, I worked at WXRT, and I don't know if you know that station in Chicago, but
sure.
All right, there you go. We were always, and again, I say we because I was with them for 9 years. We were always artist friendly and new artist friendly, and they still do a weekly new releases and new band, kind of shows and stuff like that, at least weekly. But like you said, I was there during the rise of Napster and watched it all go away, and also watched the companies that own these stations lean more into the focus groups and hearing the people in the focus groups going, well, I want to hear a song that I can sing along to on the radio. And it's like, sure you do. And absolutely, we all do. But by the same token, don't you want to discover new music as well? And, the digital platform kind of took that away from broadcasting.
Yeah.
And it's a totally different game now. And, dude, I'm telling you, I worked at music stations as late as 2015, or it's 2016, and it was so frustrating. Only 3 years ago to hear our album rock station just play what I call mall music. Mm-hmm. And it's like, God damn it, man, this is an AOR station. This is an album-oriented rock station. How come we're not at least playing deeper cuts beyond, Saturday and Sunday night on a couple syndicated shows? Well, God, when here's a classic example. Bowie's Black Star comes out, and then Bowie dies within a month of it, or weeks within its release.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why aren't we playing Black Star? Well, we're a classic rock station. Yeah, David Bowie's classic rock. Yeah. And this is the last thing he ever made. And I remember, literally 20 years earlier, longer than that, 1980, when John Lennon died, and we were playing Double Fantasy on the radio. It's like, what the fuck happened? What has happened in this business? Well, people like to hear songs that they can sing along to. I'm like, yeah, that's great, Norman. Thank you very much. It's great working here. Get me the fuck out of here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the same thing is, you see it in a lot of places. I mean, that's the same as sort of the Blockbuster mentality, where it's like, Blockbuster came in and dominated the landscape, and then was like, it's important to us, instead of having any, Wong Kar-wai films, we're going to make sure we have 100 copies of Armageddon on hand so everyone can come in and get Armageddon when they need it. And at a certain point, people don't want to come in and get 100 copies of Armageddon, and Blockbuster goes belly up, and then it's like, well, you killed the local video store, and now there are no video stores. And now when you want to watch, Chungking Express, that's not an option. But Armageddon is, of course, on some streaming platform somewhere. But, yeah, I mean, I think there's a move.
You're right, yeah.
Well, I just think it's interesting because, I was saying that comics has this sort of, music business but 15 years behind it kind of problem.
You're right. Yep.
The nice thing about comics is, the music industry basically killed itself and blew up, and, record stores died, and then they figured out, vinyl is actually something that's nice. It's nice to hold vinyl. It's nice to play. It's nice to feel the warmth of a vinyl record and hear the pops. And there's something sort of religious about going to the record store and picking it up off the shelf and bringing it home. And so there was a resurgence in record stores and mom and pop shops because, the Towers and the HMVs and the Virgins had all gone away, and the dinosaurs dying, the small mammals could come out and exist in the shadows. It's not, you don't have the titans marching the earth, roaming the earth that you once did, but there's life on the planet. And I think comics, luckily, we had the collapse, we had the post-90s bubble, but that idea of the value, we never had the move to CDs. CDs was never, there's no comic version of CD where the romance of the art's smaller and it's just digital and it's not as, it's not as nice or romantic. We didn't have
I would argue that I think comic CDs were the 90s gimmick comics of the hologram covers and the collectability of a comic versus, hey, can we get a good story in the hollow foil cover and stuff like that?
Yeah. That had never dawned on me, but that's an interesting take to be like, you're doing away with great cover art to get an image that you can stamp on a hollow foil that's just got to be one character. You're not getting Alex Ross to do it because Alex Ross can't be turned into a hollow foil. So, I think that's an interesting analogy that I never thought of. But, I think the romance of comics has been built into it since before the collapse of the comic shop. So I think comics didn't have, obviously the collapse in the 90s was terrible and, a lot of people lost their jobs and livelihoods and it's awful. But also, comics had that romantic angle built in of the, there are so many people I know who talk about comics and talk about, the trip to the comic shop and the the holding of the physical book and the joy of like having it in a shelf and having it, like the correlations, the sort of the way the muscle memory works of like digging through crates of records of 7 inches and digging through a long box of comics. Like they're very similar. They're very tactile.
I'm with you. Dude, I honestly cried as the digital music thing happened, and it's like kids need record stores. Mm-hmm. They need bookstores. They need comic shops. They need a place to hang and discover art. Yeah. And that's really their entry to the art world, and it's because it's their music and it's their art that the parents don't understand.
For sure.
No, man. I always say I'm Uncle Buck. I never had kids, but I think living my childhood as I have since my teen years, I kind of have a little different perspective. And it's like, no, we need that shit, man. And kids need that shit. They need a place to hang out and discover art and discover themselves in the process. And so, thank God, the comic shops still exist and they're happening. And also that again, alongside the dinosaurs of DC and Marvel and stuff, all these different little companies have been able to pop up. Sure. Black Mask has been a great, I think really, independent voice in there and everything. Yeah. And I love what's happening in that. Again, I'll point to my perennial sponsor, Aftershock, is another great little platform and stuff that's, doing interesting, different comics beyond what the big two are doing. But yeah, so I'm glad you had that opportunity at Black Mask. And God damn, man, both 4 kids walk into a bank and We Can Never Go Home. No, those are just great examples of your distinct voice and again, a great alternative to what the big two give us.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I think like, Matt Pizzolo, who runs Black Mask and also does books there. I think, I said once, like, there's going to be a moment in this industry where Matt is really viewed as like one of the, one of the great eyes for talent, like up there with I don't want to say up there with like a Karen Berger or someone like that, but like the people who've come out of Black Mask, like, not to, throw myself in with that, but like the talent that came through that as a publisher versus other indie publishers where it's just like, just so many good people got their sort of start there. And it's, like Teenie Howard's first creator-owned book is a Black Mask. Vita Ayala's first creator-owned book is a Black Mask. My first creator-owned book is a Black Mask. Alexis Zierett, like,
excellent. Yes, I love Alexis. He's awesome. Yes.
Yeah, so many people doing great work, like Tony Patrick and Mags Visaggio, and just like all these people who are Kurt Pierce, like all these people who are doing, I think, really great, fascinating, cool books. Are Zach Thompson, Lonnie Nadler, like all these people who are just doing stuff that I love are can point to Black Mask as like, well, that was the first door that opened. And I think like, in the history books, it's like Black Mask is not going to dominate sales anytime soon, but like, the eye for talent and the cultivation of talent there has been really impeccable. So
how long has Black Mask been around? About just under 10 years, right?
No, it's less than that. Man, I'm so bad at this stuff.
I was told there'd be no math today. I apologize.
Yeah. I want to say 13, 14.
Yeah, 13, 14, okay.
Yeah.
All right, 6 years. All right, that's cool. No, and it made a hell of an impact, I think, in those short few years.
Yeah, I think so.
Absolutely, man. No, in fact, I'm probably going to hit you up for. I'm sure I have it somewhere, but I should get Matt on sometime to talk about Black Mask and everything and its impact on comics in the last few years. Pretty cool.
For sure.
Great stuff. And truly, go ahead.
I was just going to say he's a great he's a great writer. He's a writer who I really love because he is truly like sort of a fearless lunatic. Like he just comes out with stories and books where I'm just like, oh, I don't think you're allowed to do that. And he's like, well, let's find out.
That's great.
But
that's excellent.
But also just like a really good, solid dude and great, great company and someone who really wants to just like sort of give his all to sort of promoting good art, which I have nothing but respect for. So.
Well, and I just, it's funny. I just had David Lloyd on the show, and he was telling me about Aces Weekly. And when you really look at the anthology and who he puts out, he's got a great eye for talent. And I agree with you mentioning Kurt and Teeny and people like that came through Black Mass. There's so many great people like yourself, and absolutely include yourself. I mean, it's a great roster, and I think are responsible for a lot of the great new voices in comics right now. So. Excellent stuff, Matt. I'm so thrilled with everything that's happening for you. I'm excited about this Hawkeye series and beyond. Your Star Wars work has been fun, and I hope you get to go back to that universe soon. I don't know if anything's already been announced.
No,
as far as that goes.
No, nothing. I'm going to go see the movie, so I'm going back to the universe as a ticket holder. I'm very excited about.
That's cool. Are you enjoying The Mandalorian? Of course.
Yes. Yeah, I love it.
Me too. Me too.
I'm a big fan of the like the Shogun samurai stuff and
sure, absolutely,
like,
man.
Old spaghetti western. So like all the sort of nods to that stuff is really gets me right in the sweet spot.
There's a YouTuber that's like, hey, they're not westerns, they're samurai stories. It's like they're both. Relax. It's like they're scratching both. We noticed the lone wolf and cub reference right away, just like you did. Calm down. Yeah. It's okay.
Yeah,
but they are also westerns as well.
Yeah, westerns are also samurai stories very often. Yeah. So it's like, fine.
Well, that's the thing, man, and especially by the 70s, it was like, look, both genres were influencing each other. It's like, just relax, it's fine.
Yeah.
But no, man, that's terrific, and yeah, man, I'm so glad that we finally had this opportunity to have this conversation.
Yeah. Great.
And truly, let's by all means, let's check in a few months and do it again. You're welcome. You're welcome anytime, and it was a great conversation, and it went in places that I wasn't expecting. I love the music talk because, like I said, man, that was my career path. I really thought I was going to be in the music business, and the music business changed, and radio changed along with it, and suddenly I'm, doing this.
Yeah.
And so I truly feel a real kinship with a lot of you, both comic book creators, but also music creators as well in terms of what I'm doing with the podcast. So I feel like we're all on the same path.
For sure.
Just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely was like one of those people who was like, I'm going to be in the music business for the rest of my life. And I just remember like being like, well, the record stores I like are closing, and college radio means nothing anymore. Like college radio has less than no impact. And
wow. Yeah.
Just like, this is collapsing. Like, this is actively collapsing. And a big thing for me was our CD manufacturer was just like, we're closing shop. And I was like, and it was not be hard to find another CD manufacturer, but I was like, these were people that used to be like, you'd put in a CD order, and CDs are made so quick, and it was like, they'd be like, it's, we'll get you your CDs in 3 weeks, and you'd be like, you can't do faster? Because you knew they could do it in a day.
Wow.
They had so many orders.
Sure.
And then they were just like, there's just no business. Sorry. And I was like,
wow,
that's bad. So
yeah, man, no, and really, like you said, the bigger problem in terms of physical media, and that's something that my friend Rob Meyer Burnett has been, really, because he was a big CD and Laserdisc guy going that far back. So, and also was producing special features for a ton of movies in the sweet spot when the movie companies gave a shit and were like making these elaborate documentaries, and along with the deleted scenes, but really getting into a lot of bonus features on DVDs. And that it still happens to a degree, but not to the degree it did 15 years ago. And he was part of that whole movement, and he's like, and he keeps saying it on his YouTube show. He's like, physical media is dying, man. Get what you can. Yeah. And like you said about like Chungking Express and other like little movies like that, Yeah, what streaming service is going to run all that stuff? I mean, they're going to be scattered over a bunch of them, and I don't know if the Anchor Bays or some of these other smaller DVD companies are going to, Kino Lorber have their own streaming services, or what streaming partnerships they might do. But yeah, man, it's tough. It's tough out there to find the cool little movies on streaming, and certainly, so yeah, buy those DVDs and buy those CDs, kids, while you can.
I saw someone on Twitter the other day be like, "Hey, if you're lucky enough to be getting Academy Award screeners, and you get The Irishman, hold on to it."
Yes,
and they were like, if Netflix,
it's gonna be a collectible, yeah.
If Netflix goes under in 2 years, like deals like this, the movies don't just go out into the public. They were like, there'll be a Martin Scorsese movie that vanishes. They're like,
you're right.
First time ever, there'll be a movie that is just gone. And they were like, that is literally like going to be film history. Like, hold on to Irishman screeners.
100%, man. Yeah. No, you're right about that. Jesus, God, yeah, you're right. And as a SAG member, getting their screeners, and thank God, it's funny. Half the SAG nominees we get just reviewer links online, and the other half we do get physical copies of stuff. And thank God Netflix has ironically always been physical film, DVDs and stuff like that for their nominations and stuff. Yeah. And I keep waiting. Honestly, Matt, I keep waiting I've only been doing this for 3 years, and I keep waiting each year to be like, all right, this is the year that they're going to go to purely, screener links versus physical discs sending out. I don't know. I'll find out in a couple of weeks because they'll be coming soon.
Yeah. I think not this year, but soon for sure.
Pretty soon, yeah, man. No, that's insane. Good stuff. Matt, terrific conversation, man. Honestly, I really appreciate it. And everybody, New Year's Day, Hawkeye FreeFall. I've read it. I've seen it. It's worth your time, man. And it's a great book. Of course it is. And more great stuff coming from Matt Rosenberg. And hopefully we'll talk about it in the future here on Word Balloon.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, John.
There we go. Was that cool?
Yeah, it was great.
Excellent, man. So there you go. Great conversation to keep you warm over the weekend. Matthew Rosenberg talking about all his great work on today's Word Balloon. I hope you listened to my conversation as well with my dear friend Tony Fleece. Tony is one of my favorite people in comics. I'm laughing because I'm thinking of all the great conversations we've had over the years, and from his My Little Pony work to his Star Wars Young Adventures work, and also his brand new graphic novel called Time Shopper from Action Lab. Really great stuff. Very funny. He's always been one of my favorite funny guys in comics, man, whether it's in his own work as a writer or in conversation after hours or even on the convention floor. So check out this really fun conversation with Tony Fleece, the companion podcast on today's Word Balloon. They're both number one as far as I'm concerned, Matthew and Tony, and I hope you enjoyed them. Thanks a lot for listening today. Brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners via Patreon, patreon.com/Word Balloon. Also brought to you by Aftershock Comics. They are closing out the year with tremendous product, and as I say, it's the holiday season. Man, you want to do something great for the comic book reader in your life? Go to their website and check out the Aftershock books. You're going to find name creators, and they're going to go, wait a minute, I like Marguerite Bennett. Yeah, I want to read something different from Marguerite Bennett. I'm going to check out Animosity. I'm going to check out her graphic novels. Colin Bunn has a couple graphic novels over at Aftershock, and well deserving of your attention. And also the great series Dark Arc that you can get in trade form, and also it's ongoing right now in its second chapter with Juan Doe. You can get Bad for Reception from Juan Doe. You can get, that's a title. That's not a condition for your receivers. You can also get great stuff from Tim Seeley and Phil Hester and Garth Ennis. Good Lord. Reach back and check out Paul Jenkins' wonderful series. They're available at Aftershock. Really mind-bending sci-fi stuff from Paul. So many great things. The Art of Jim Starlin, as I mentioned earlier, a great book that Aftershock is proud to be representing. You should definitely check that out. So tremendous Christmas gifts that are available, both oversized editions of full volumes of some of the runs, and also graphic novels, both independent graphic novels and, of course, story arc collections of graphic novels. Great Christmas ideas, and also paraphernalia, an Aftershock mug, an Aftershock t-shirt. Why not? Go to their website. You'll find full story descriptions, preview pages, and the diamond codes on how to order these books through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. Next week, boom! And that doesn't mean the publisher. A big interview that I have been dying to release, and I'm so excited to share it with you and some of the surprises that creator has coming up for us. So check it out. It's coming on the next episode of Word Balloon. Until then, thanks for listening. Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions, copyright 2019.